Okay, well, it looks like we have a decent number of folks who have joined us, so I will go ahead and get us kicked off. We are so thankful and excited to have Mr. Jarrett Adams with us today. My name is Katie Briggs. I'm the Development Associate with the Great North Innocence Project, and I facilitate our new Wrongful Convictions book club. Redeeming Justice is the second book that our club has read together. We met a couple of weeks ago to discuss it amongst community members. And like I said, we are so excited to have the opportunity not only for Mr. Adams to share his story and his voice with us through his incredible memoir, but through our conversation tonight. So I'll go ahead and introduce him quickly. We do have some questions that have been previously submitted that we'll kick off with, but feel free to send me messages or use the Q&A function if you have additional questions as well. All right, so to get us started, Mr. Adams was wrongfully convicted at age 17 and exonerated after serving nearly 10 years for a crime he did not commit. He used the injustice he endured as inspiration to become an advocate and attorney for the underserved and earned his JD from Loyola University Chicago School of Law in 2015. Mr. Adams joined the Innocence Project in New York as an attorney in 2016 before launching the law offices of Jarrett Adams in 2017. His firm specializes in criminal defense, civil rights, and wrongful conviction cases in state and federal courts. He's also the co-founder of Life After Justice, which is a nonprofit organization that transforms lived experience and data into evidence that strengthens advocacy, advances accountability, and prevents future wrongful convictions. Redeeming Justice is a memoir about Mr. Adams's wrongful conviction at 17, his decade in prison, and his subsequent journey to becoming a lawyer to fight for justice for others. Mr. Adams, is there anything that I missed that you'd like to add?
No, and thank you all for having me on. I think you did a great job, Katie, and thank you for putting this together. I think that this is work and powerful work in spreading the message and also building more and more justice warriors. And it's a great place to be in Minnesota.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, we'll jump right in. How have your experiences seeking legal support while incarcerated informed how you interact with your clients as an attorney?
Yeah, I think that it has made me become even more patient and understanding. And also, it is as me and my firm, we do consult with family members as well. Now, typically lawyers don't do that because number one, they just don't have enough time, right? And number two, they're not necessarily required per the ethics rules to, engage with family members because the client is the client. However, we understand, especially myself, is that look, the family is incarcerated as well. They just don't have the shackles on them. And so when you have moms and dads and sisters and aunts who are pooling together money, and a lot of that money is coming from retirement, 401k, and car washes and barbecues, we believe that they as well should have a right, to at least know what is going on with a journey in which they didn't sign up to be on.
Thank you, absolutely. Is there anything that you think the public at large gets wrong about wrongful convictions?
I think that the public is confused at the celebration of the release. And I think that oftentimes it is forgotten, the struggle, the hill that it is to climb that's called reentry. Even though I'm practicing law, have my own firm, the tentacles of my wrongful conviction will forever reach me. I use this often when I speak. I give the example of, my first Christmas at home and how awkward it was, being introduced to my niece and my nephews who were born while I was incarcerated. Um, going through the family photo album, right? And you're turning pictures and your pictures stop while the family's pictures continue and the family grows. People have passed and gone on. And then the next picture of you doesn't show up until a decade later. And so I think that the struggle, which is the reason why, I tried in my own fashion to extend my palm and help folks that were just like me. And that's why I created Life After Justice, because the emphasis that we place on the organization, I found it was, look, reentry is difficult. It's hard. When Jim and the gang get people out, you guys are struggling, and spitting glue, trying to figure out how to get therapy, how to get housing, stable housing, how to teach someone how to log on to Zoom, right? So the issues of reentry, I believe, they need to become more of a forefront of attention, because I think that it assists us in the fight that it is to clear the wrongfully convicted. A lot of times, people aren't, having their convictions overturned, not because the evidence isn't enough to support that reversal. It's because people have been so frightened by the historical depictions of what is going on in our corrections that they're afraid to let people out that they don't know about. So the more people who are able to get out, reintegrate well, do well, speak about their journey, I think that it chips away at the stigmas, and that in itself spills over into the judicial system to allow people to get second opportunities. And I don't, I say, when I say second opportunities, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. There shouldn't have been a first opportunity, right? But what I mean is having an opportunity to reboot their lives, sometimes decades at a time that have gone.
Absolutely. And at the Great North Innocence Project, I know many of our supporters and folks who stay connected with us know that we are currently investigating some options for our emerging reentry support. We've had elements of it in place for all of the 25 years that we've been doing this work, but to your point, Mr. Adams, there are so many components to it. And not only that,
Right.
but everybody's story and experience and needs are so incredibly different.
And to your point, Katie, I also, one of the things that we're doing with the nonprofit, I encourage all who are attending tonight to go look up lifeafterjustice.org. So here's what we're doing. We're doing a national survey, and we're trying to get at least 2 to 3 exonerees from each state, each project. And we are doing a survey that is asking questions about reentry, right? What are their needs, what are their obstacles, and what we plan to do now is we have to shift from going to legislators and lawmakers and saying, look, you should do this because this is right. And now say you should do this because these numbers support that that's something that's horribly wrong. When people are being released, they're being released with no health care, with no dental care, with struggles, to reintegrate and get to know and acclimate back with their family members. So we have to move from asking people to do what is right and demanding that they do what is right, supported by numbers behind us.
Definitely. I and a couple of my colleagues were lucky to attend Life After Justice's presentation at the recent Innocence Network conference. And
Mhm.
that the data is so compelling in telling the story. And so many people, we can't fathom ourselves being in your shoes or being in the shoes of a wrongfully convicted person. And so I think that that data, to your point, is so compelling in telling that story and actually helping folks understand what the need is. And it's not a want, it's a need.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, when the Great Northern Innocence Project is filing briefs, they are using data that has been collected through the registry, and just other points of data. And what they're doing is they're supporting their arguments with the number of cases where DNA has excluded someone, or reversed the conviction where someone had did a false confession. So this is how important it is to make sure that we are collecting data now on a reentry of folks across the nation.
Definitely. What about people in the legal profession? What do you think
Mhm.
lawyers, paralegals, medical experts, and other professionals need to understand about wrongful convictions and innocence work?
I think that the real understanding is that this work is difficult. It is hard. Um, and I would say this. So a car wash, like the justice system, is man-made. But the differences are, if you go through a car wash and the machine forgets to get the bumper or windshield, I mean, you can go right back in, and get the car washed, or they'll give you one of those cards and say, come back tomorrow, or whatever it is. Our justice system, when it misses a bumper or a windshield, I mean, you don't get to go back through again until decades later. That is the most difficult and gut-wrenching thing to think about in terms of these cases. And also, it's one of these things where the areas that need it the most are oftentimes supported the least, right? And when you look at the pie chart of our criminal justice system and where the DOJ puts its money, most of that money goes to what they call policing. And policing efforts are, how do we convict? And there's a very small percentage on reentry, an even smaller percentage on, mental health care when folks are getting out. There's equally a small percentage on the public defense, and there's not any percentage on post-conviction exoneration efforts at all. And even so much so that the DOJ has taken awards from folks like GNIP and also from Life After Justice, where we were awarded to do the work and continue the work, and the DOJ took those funds from different organizations like GNIP and others. And so that is the difficulty. And so when we say every little bit helps, that's what we're talking about. So whether it's a commitment of, you know what, I'm not gonna do Starbucks this day. I'm gonna do Folgers Crystal and I'm gonna donate $5. That thing moves the ball along a lot further than you all may think. And I think that is the difficulty about the nostalgia, if that's the proper term, of wrongful conviction work. And I think that we have to find a way to continue to advance in our criminal justice system as much as we've advanced in technology with AI and this and that. We need to turn science and data to our criminal justice system because we can't be the greatest nation and also its greatest incarcerator as well.
Definitely. It's something that I've learned, and I've been with GNIP for a little under a year, is that our expenses for supporting our innocent clients can vary so incredibly much from case to case. And that's
Yeah,
why every little bit of support really, really does make a difference and means that we're able to say yes to the innocent clients who deserve our support and deserve our advocacy.
yeah,
For folks like myself, and I'm so humbled and grateful to be able to be part of Innocence work, but for legal professionals and other people involved in Innocence work who maybe don't have the lived experience, is there any, I hate to ask for advice because again, you shouldn't have ever been in this position. Is there anything that you want people without lived experience to know about this work? Any particular, whether it's vocabulary or how we interact with
yeah.
people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys are already taking the step that must be, and that is, reading, um, uh, learned experiences in terms of going to and hearing someone speak, right? Reading about wrongful convictions past the headlines. It's all an effort to learn, right?
Mhm.
The learned experience I have is the actually going through it. But the learned experience that others have is learning about the issues and doing something about it. And look, when I speak, I often talk about my grandfather and uh one of the things that he used to do to get uh arguments extinguished in our house. We would every Sunday we would get together at my grandmother's house and we would have dinner. So my mom had about four sisters, five brothers. It was a big family, right? And they, oftentimes would get in disputes. And my grandfather was such a patient man. He didn't get up and say much until he had had enough. And he would end these arguments by saying, look, that's enough of this crap because you talking about your crap, she talking about no crap, her crap, but you guys don't understand each other's crap on your own shoe. And I want you to think about that, right? And stop this crap. That was his thing, right? And so I have taken that and pushed it to another analogy where I would say, imagine crap being on the sidewalk, and there are three people. One person walks past it in a rush, doesn't think about it. The second person walks past, sees it, and says, somebody should clean that up. But that third person steps in it, and now they are fully invested in it, right? And I say to that question you asked about learned actually or learned experience through learning, it does not take anyone to step on the crap and get it on their shoe to acknowledge this is some crap that's going on in our justice system.
That's a very powerful analogy, and I don't mean to be laughing, but
Yeah,
yeah, that certainly hits the nail on the head.
yeah,
During our community book club meeting about redeeming justice, and I should add too that as you know, we have different volunteers, community members, donors who participate in our book club, and everybody commented on how compelling of a read it was in your storytelling and just couldn't put the book down. And
yeah,
one of our community members shared with us that she'd like to pass on the message. Thank you for sharing your story. The world needs you, your indomitable spirit, and your incredible testimony. I wanted to share that from one of our participants before moving into our next question. When we met to discuss redeeming justice a few weeks ago, we listed out all of the factors that we thought may have contributed to your wrongful conviction,
hmm,
from the no defense strategy to an all-white jury and flat-out racism. Multiple dominoes had to fall to result in your wrongful conviction.
yeah.
Why then do you think they occur as frequently as they do?
Because we have a system where there is 2.3 something million people incarcerated. There are there are only so many news channels, coverages. And I felt like, particularly in my situation, it was like a tree falling in the forest. Look, no one heard it, right? We were in Jefferson, Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, but didn't have any resources. And part of the reason why I wrote the book in the fashion that I did and gave, a dedication to my mom and her aunts is because legitly they were beating themselves up that they couldn't afford to give me an attorney. And I don't think that our justice system should turn on who can afford it, but that's exactly what it is. And I just think that, um, when I go back and I pause, to reflect on the journey of getting to where I am, I do think about how some of the same hallmarks of what led to my wrongful conviction are literally still here. And we spend so much money on different things. Yet we don't spend money on the things that are the lowest hanging fruit that will help people in our system. There is a great percentage of people who are going to be convicted based on whether or not they can bond out while they're going through the process. Most of the people who have their convictions reversed, they can't bond out. They were never bonded out. They were in prison or they were in jail from the time that they were arrested. And that affects studies and numbers show that it affects, how you can defend yourself when you're in a county jail or whether you're out on some type of bond and you're able to contribute to the defense that you have, right? And so I can go on and on about a number of different low-hanging fruit things that both can be done to fix the system as well as ensuring the public safety as well, because I know that that is the biggest response to a lot of change in our system. Oh, well, the danger in the community. And it's one of these things where it's like, we have to continue to educate ourselves past headlines and Twitter feed posts because it is made to believe that um, crime is just a black and brown thing predominantly, that if we just build more prisons and do more heftier sentences, that'll fix things. That has never worked. And some of the wealthiest people in our country have told us what will work. That is incentivization. You have to incentivize people out of their circumstances, whether that be nice paying jobs or training programs, whatever it may be, right? But it is not a mistake or a coincidence that the correlations of wrongful convictions in impoverished communities are neck and neck in this situation.
Definitely, that's been another huge lesson that I've learned since I've become involved with innocence work is that wrongful convictions are not mistakes, they're not isolated
Yeah.
incidents, they are results of a system doing what it was designed to do in so many ways. Um,
Absolutely.
but I'd love to dive a little bit deeper on and talk about some of that low-hanging fruit. I know so many of our book club participants and supporters are really interested in, okay, so we know about these issues. What do we do? What can
Yeah.
we accomplish? And how do we get at these root causes? And at the Great North Innocence Project, policy work is a really core tenet of our
Right.
work to not just correct wrongful convictions, but actually prevent them and address the root causes. So
Yeah.
please share any of the low-hanging fruit. I know
Right.
people will be really interested in that.
Yeah. And look, thank you to the supporters and also the comment that you read. I really appreciate hearing stuff like that. It is petrol to this justice car that I drive frequently. Okay. Um, I would say this, having practiced law now for close to 10 years, we have to start in our own backyards with simple things. And an example of that is this. How many times have we went into the ballot booth and don't know nothing about the judge that we circled, right? Or if you are in an election town with a sheriff, we don't know nothing about these people other than what we saw on the news or something like that. And we will go in there and circle and check mark boxes, sometimes based off last names or just based off of, let me get the hell on out of here. I got to make dinner for the kids, right? That is us not using our power to vote the way in which we should. And I think that what we need to do is in each individual state, each person within the county need to develop their own task force, so to speak, on who is being elected, what is their track record, what is their stance on righting wrongs and not taking a decade to do so. What have people voted for in terms of legislation, for compensating the wrongfully convicted, not just by monetary, but also with things such as healthcare and mental health care. So it's like we must do our due diligence as the most powerful court, in my opinion, which is the court of public opinion. That's one way. I'll tell you another way. So I'll never forget, like, when I'm going through this, I'm 17 years old. Um, and that year, uh, Tupac dropped a double CD. It was the first time ever a rap artist had dropped a double CD, two CDs at once, right? And me and my friends listened to that thing until the CD player was hot as grease, right? We knew all of the words to this CD. When I got in that police station, I did not know one word to the constitutional rights that would have afforded me the protection of not saying anything until I got a lawyer or a guardian there. We have to, in the same vein of, I believe this was Frederick Douglass who made this quote. Um, it is easier to teach and learn our youth than it is to fix broken adults, right? And in that vein, it is a reason why the school systems are being attacked in the way in which they're being attacked. There's a reason why there are bans on books, right? And the reason why is because we are trying to curtail the youth to believe a certain, ideology. And so I think that our fight is not only in the system itself, but it is the fight to make sure that the people who are coming behind us, the young people, are educated and they never, ever, ever are losing sympathy and empathy, because that is what's missing in all of this, right? The sympathy and empathy for others. It is so easy for us to watch people, be depicted in a certain fashion, and when they get locked up and thrown away, it's easy for us to turn around and not think about it. Why? Because we've been conditioned that anyone who has a pair of handcuffs on them, we don't ask what are they accused of. We ask what did they do. So I think that is twofold in terms of the fight of the existing system that we have, um, and also the education of our youth, because not everyone, prayerfully, no one will experience a wrongful conviction growing up. But there are going to be folks who have the opportunity to be in powerful legislative seats. And those are the folks that we are counting on to make the right decision as us as a human race going forward.
That's a really excellent segue into the next question I had. I've noticed on social media your law firm has been doing a series to really educate people on their
Hmm.
rights. I mean, to your point, I learned probably just 2 years ago that the police are allowed to lie to you in the course of an interrogation. And
Yeah,
there's some restrictions on that regarding age. And at GNIP, we're really working on wanting that to be banned entirely. But
yeah,
to your point, there are so many things that people, and especially youth who may be most at risk of being incarcerated, um, just we don't know these things. I went
yeah,
to college and there was no class on how to protect yourself
right.
against law enforcement or against injustices. So can you tell a little bit more about that series that you're doing and
Yeah.
yeah, that decision.
So I get a lot of requests for help. And again, it goes back to my mom, and I hate to come across as the biggest mama boy, but I'm the biggest mama's boy. Okay. And like I said, when people are asking me questions and they're like, what's the worst thing you experienced or saw through your journey of it? It was looking at those wrinkles and creases of anguish on my mother's forehead. And it was her, you know, not being able to help, right? Um, that really got me to want to help. You know what I mean? And I remember, and I put this in a book. I remember, they mail you the diploma. You can get the diploma from law school. They'll give you, the thing that you walk across stage with, but they'll mail you the diploma. And I remember my mom having it, and I remember her crying. And I'm like, we're done crying, right? We're here now. We're done crying. She said, no, I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm happy that you will be able to help some other family who are on an island um, of despair, and help them, educate them. When that attorney came out in the hallway and told us no defense theory, um, hell, we thought it was a good idea because we didn't do nothing, right? And I've learned now through my experience of practicing law, whenever an attorney say, come out in the hall, let me talk to you for a second, that shit is never a good conversation, okay? It is not going to be a good conversation, all right, at all. So when we're there and the opportunity to proceed to that trial or join an appeal that I ultimately should have joined with Ravon Hill's attorney, um, I, in large part, decided that I wanted to go forward with the trial based off what this attorney was saying, but also just looking at my mother, man. I look at if I never would have snuck off and told her I was spending the night over my friend's house, went to this party. We're not in a situation, so I carried the burden as well on my own. I lied to get out the house, and now I got my mother driving 3 or 4 hours up to Wisconsin, with no money, right? And so I oftentimes think about that, and what I do is send the elevator back down as much as I can.
Definitely. I spoke about that with my mom who read your book, and she's not a lawyer, not a legal professional, but learned a lot from your story. And we talked about how every 17-year-old lies to their mom at some point, and that we should all have the freedom to not even just make mistakes, but to be young and to grow up, and that should never result in somebody spending their life incarcerated.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about how we can reduce wrongful convictions and prevent them, but I'm wondering, your journey from defendant to defender, and you've learned so much, I'm sure, on both sides of that experience about how
Mhm.
challenging post-conviction litigation
Oh
is,
man.
how incredibly time-consuming it is. I just crunched some numbers yesterday and found out that at the Great North Innocence Project, we represent a client for an average of over 8 years
Yes.
between when we first connect with them and they are freed or exonerated. And that is obviously that means that that number is much higher for some innocent people. And so if you had a magic wand, what would you change about post-conviction litigation?
Well, number one, we would not have something that's called a DEPA, right? A DEPA is the Anti-Death Penalty and Terrorism Act, for folks who don't know. That rule says that state and also federal people who are convicted, they have a timeline to bring claims of innocence. Now, one one should be disturbed alone by just the thought of that, right? You mean to tell me I'm innocent, but because I didn't bring it, 3 months before, you won't hear it? Um, there's no way in the world that rule of law makes us better as a society, and definitely not as a justice system. And so that is a problem. And also, I think that what is clear to me is that um, I'll give this example, and I used it in the book as well. So, in order to get through law school, I had done a bunch of study abroads, and the one of the last ones I did was in England. It was in London, and we had to go to the Old Bailey, is the name of their court system, and view their system and compare it to our system and write something on what will we change, what will we not, stuff like that. So as I'm there for these days throughout the process that we're there, I am noticing that there was a barrier. There, you could tell the lawyers who are passionate and on top of their game and who aren't. And there was this lady, barrister, and she was prosecuting a child sexual assault case. Those cases are never easy, no matter what side you're on, right? And she was just amazing. She was ready to go. She had everything, all ducks in a row. She was amazing. Literally, a few days later, I saw her defending a man who was accused of a sexual assault with the same zealousness, passion, um, strategery on her game. And I walked away, and that was my paper. We need to find a way to preserve the sympathy and empathy in our justice system because we've created an adversarial system where prosecutors believe that their job is only to get convictions. Defense attorneys believe that their job is only to get their clients, off of a case, right? Um, and I think that when you pit sides against one another, I mean, I don't care if it's a cornhole contest, pool, volleyball. I don't care what it is. You want to win, right? And when your only objective is winning, justice is the loser. And so I think that there has to be a separate, unbiased entity established to review post-conviction issues. And it can't be from offices where sometimes you see the prosecutor go from being a prosecutor to now when your conviction is being challenged, now this prosecutor is a judge, right? That creates its own conflicts within the hallways of the judicial system in which you're trying to get your conviction reversed. And so that would be my avocation. It would be that look, we have to create and then look, if we are able to, if a car company is producing cars, and on average, those cars are being wrongfully produced at a high rate, right? We would create an independent body to investigate why are these cars being wrongfully produced. Yet, right? We have now thousands of people who, through DNA and other avenues, have been proven to be innocent, but there's no independent body set up to create, to go through and make sure. And instead, our justice system is fixated on finality instead of justice.
This has been a major topic of conversation at both of our book club discussions so far. Both of the books that we've read is the amount of tunnel vision that's present for
Mhm.
law enforcement, for prosecutors. Like you said, that finality and that the focus on winning rather than on truth, rather than
Yeah.
on justice. And it's almost like people are trying to win a game, but it is people's lives and it's the integrity of
Yeah.
our justice system.
Think about this, Katie. When's the election season is coming up? It seems like it's always election season around here, but so election season is coming up. How many people have you seen running for any office say, vote for me? Because if you vote for me, I'm gonna make sure I go through this justice system with a fine-tooth comb. And the people who are wrongfully convicted, they will be rightfully released. And I'm talking about right now, right away. They don't. They usually say, I'm tough on crime. My opponent is weak on crime. Come vote for me, or there'll be a crime. Literally, that's what we have. And I think that we as a society have to now challenge these old draconian slogans and lines and start looking at the numbers. Okay, we don't have some outrageous Armageddon problem with crime right now. We have isolated pockets of crimes where people are committing crimes, usually amongst the people that they're living amongst. And so those are the real numbers. And I think that is it's a scary thing that mass population of folks will simply take the first feed or headline and run with that as truth.
Absolutely. I've unmuted, I've asked our legal fellow Nate, who co-facilitated our discussion of redeeming justice with me and read your case and not only the book, but your case and did a ton of research. And so I'm going to invite him to ask some questions as well here.
Hey Nate, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having us, Jared, and thanks for joining. I have to start by saying that I got an all caps text from Bobby Bintz demanding that I say hi to you. So hello from Bobby. Um,
Tell Bobby I said hello.
I will. I will. Couple. I've limited it to two questions. And I'll to start with because I want other folks to be able to participate too. But the first one, we've talked a lot about the system and how it currently exists right now. But I got to ask a little bit more specifically about your case. I mean, so
Mhm.
you had this accuser, and I have to know, did that person ever reach out to you, apologize, recant, ever have any contact with you? I mean, you became famous after this. So I wonder if that
Yeah.
ever happened.
No, Nate, everybody headed for the hills, okay? Because they were concerned about being sued, right?
Okay.
Um, the prosecutor who prosecuted my case became a judge and disappeared off the bench, after my reversal and rise. The judge retired, um, and there was a roommate who was integral in this story, right? That's the only one who's ever offered an apology in an affidavit. She offered an affidavit to help and assist with my co-defendant's, case and getting him out because he missed his habeas deadline. She's the only one that was just like, look, you know what? I was wrong. I got it wrong, but I wasn't intentionally wrong, right? And so I've decided that maybe if I lived a life expecting for someone to apologize for what was done to me, I wouldn't be living my life. You know, um, I am so visible, right? So visible that any one of them could have come out and challenged anything. But the facts are the facts here. They literally got the element of force based on nothing but us being black men. There was testimony that no one uh, pushed, pulled, threatened, or anything. It was simply our presence in this room, right? Um, and so when I think about that, I think about, you know, just just how just how dangerous it is, to be black in America at times, right? Oftentimes, I should say. And so now we've attempted to, and when I say we, my co-defendant, because he still has this on his record, even though he was, freed. And so we've attempted to find a way to get this removed. And so, I mean, there's not, I talked to Sean Demain too. So Sean Demain was the witness who I was playing video games with, And he's following me on social media and stuff like that because I wanted his permission before I put his name in the book and all of that type of stuff as well. So it's good to be able to to get the acknowledgments from the folks who want to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It was one thing that I was left wondering about after I finished it. The other question is more about the legal piece of it, and
Hmm.
I can tell you from my personal experience. Before I was a legal fellow with GNIP, I was a law just a law clerk during my time in law school, and I went through a zillion letters from folks reaching out across the states that we
Yeah,
cover, and you know. We know anecdotally that I've heard like between like 2 and 5 to 2 and 7% of folks are wrongfully convicted. And it seemed like when I was reading these letters, like almost all of them had some sort of good case for innocence. And yet, either there was an issue with getting back into court for because of a time bar, or
yeah,
there was, a self-defense claim that we couldn't really, it was kind of the purview of the jury to judge credibility. I wanted to get a sense in your professional work now that you've um, become a lawyer and after having struggled for almost a decade to get anyone to believe you, how you do that sort of intake in your work, because
yeah,
I've never been wrongfully convicted and I try my best to be empathetic for these people, but I also know that like we only take, if we get 200 cases in a year, we'll take like 10 of them or something like that. And how do you balance that intake between knowing that like a lot of people are wrongfully convicted and like you can only help so many, and also like statistics say that like less than 10% generally are.
yeah. So what we do is and it goes to the question that Katie asked. Like that's why I do these educational how to obtain a pro bono attorney type of videos, right? Because you oftentimes you can't wait. So what families can do in the meantime is if I found this when I wrote multiple people multiple letters at a time when I was incarcerated. The responses that I would get was when I had everything as neat as I could possibly get it. So I drafted a habeas, right? I sent it to a post-conviction attorney named Rob Hennett. Rob responded back, but I had wrote him before, but he responded back on this one because I had the habeas written. I said, hey, look, I can't afford to hire you, but can you please edit it for me? And I just knew it was the best habeas ever. He redlined everything but the case caption. Okay. So that goes to show you how much I had no idea what I was doing while going through this process trying to get out. And so that I believe is why we place an emphasis on putting these videos together and putting them out to help people help themselves in that fashion. If you're out, you should be obtaining every document that you can. You should be scanning documents in order as much as you can. You should be perfecting your letter for help, right? Um, and that is how you get to the top. And essentially, hate to say this, but a lot of this is determined by resources and the squeakiest wheel gets the oil type of approach. And it also goes to a point of what Katie had said, where you are, when you take a case, you're signing up for five at the least, 10 years and on, right? So you're signing up for it. So the fuel that is needed to continue to push that car down the road has you in an unfortunate circumstance of you can know people are innocent, you can believe in their innocence, but you have absolutely nothing to fight for their innocence. And the last thing you want to do is get someone's hopes up high that you are the cavalry and you're not able to produce. The case of Terrence and Farron was a case I took right after I left the Innocence Project in 2017, right? They are just now getting released last year. So it took me 8.5 years to get the president to commute their sentence to get them released. And so we oftentimes do the simplest things, because sometimes the simplest things are overlooked, and that is just that. You know, I would love to see GNIP join me in an informational video as well about, look, here are the numbers, right? On average, projects get this amount of cases in intake a year. Kick it over to Katie, and Katie can say, look, we get thousands of letters, and we only have this amount of resources, right? And then we talk about how it is important that you are able to do what you can do, which is get every file, every document that you can, upload, scan, organize, and wash, rinse, and repeat until you get the oil, as the squeakiest wheel.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's important information, and I know that I along with some of my colleagues have gone into Minnesota's correctional facilities and had done presentations, and many of my colleagues have done many more than I. But right, like you said, like when you got to prison, you did not know. You knew the Tupac lyrics, but not the
Yeah,
constitutional protections, and it's amazing then what some of these folks who are sort of the jailhouse lawyers do learn,
yeah,
and like, they know the law better than the people who went to law school in a lot of ways. So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll let Katie jump in and do the rest of the presentation. But really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join
Thank
us.
you, Nate. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Nate. I had a question from somebody who's has a family member who is justice involved. And I know you just mentioned a video on how to access pro bono services, which I would certainly encourage people to check out. I'm wondering for the loved ones of people who may be wrongfully convicted,
Yeah,
what, resources do you recommend? You just mentioned some really great pointers about how to stay organized in a legal sense.
right.
Just wondering what words of encouragement or advice you might have for those folks.
My words of encouragement and advice come directly from my experience with watching my mom and my aunts. Um, Take care of yourself, right? Because uh, if you fall, who's there to pick up the pieces? And I think that before you wake up and tackle, your day of advocating and fighting, I think you need to take a moment to be thankful to be here, and also take some self-care time. It's the most important thing that I can advise, right? Um, some cars will run forever as long as they have an oil change, right? And you have to think about that in this journey that it is when you're battling these different systems and different, things to get loved ones out. It's okay if you don't answer the prison call because you're in the spa with cucumbers on your eyes, right? Because you have to make sure self is good in order to be able to keep up the fight. And that would be, to the people who are on and are thinking about this, you have to take a day for yourself um, in this in order to keep up the fight. And look, faith is something that you can't grab it, you can't touch it, you can't ingest it. You just have to have it. And so in order to have it, you have to have self-care as well, a part of that regimen.
Thank you, definitely. My last question is just, it's been 5 years since Redeeming Justice was published, which is really incredible, and congratulations on that. I'm
Thank
wondering if
you.
there's anything you've learned in the last 5 years or anything that you would add to your story, or I
Yeah.
guess just any topics generally that you maybe don't get asked about or that you would really enjoy the chance to talk about.
I mean, well, I'm glad you asked that question because I'm actually working on my next book. And that book is going to be called Justice for Sale, Bought and Paid For. It's going to dive into um, just what we talked about, like, how resources was a determining factor into the road that it led me down of this wrongful conviction. And now when you look today, it's blatant now. It's not even hidden, right? Um, you make a couple investments, you you know grease a couple palms, and you can get yourself a pardon or a commutation, right? I don't think it's ever been as visible as it is right now today about what really the system is about. And it is those who can afford justice and those who cannot. And so my journey going through the system was the first book. Um, this next book is going to talk about my bird's eye view of the system, um, some of its changes that can happen. And I'm not talking from um, any political side, of the aisle. I'm talking about everyone because a lot of folks can say that we all may not be in agreement with what the current administration is doing, but what we can't not dispute is that it could be done, and that means drastic changes because we're seeing it right now, right? We saw um, uh, a war on drugs that led to over incarceration and budgets that were given to different counties and police departments and sheriff's offices to do just that, right? Police more, lock people up more. Uh, who's to argue against me if I say if we did a war on uh, the school system, right, having lack of resources, a war on childcare, making sure mothers who are single or dads who are single don't have to decide whether or not they're going to go to work or watch their kids, right? If we had a war on the infrastructures that are within these impoverished areas, right? I don't know. We might mess around and have mass educated folks. We might have mass folks with opportunities. We might have mass young students who are testing out of this world now because they're given the whole enchilada and not just the fixings about how we got here to this country. Make no mistakes, this is still the greatest country in the world, right? Make no mistakes about it. Um, but in order to maintain that, we have to be transparent and we have to fix equity within our nation.
Definitely. I know myself and the rest of our book club will be very excited to read your next book, and I hope you are taking some time for self-care yourself in
I am.
between writing a book, law practice, and life and everything.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say thank you so much again for
Yeah.
your time tonight, as well as just your courage and grace in continuing to share your story and share your experience with the world.
Yeah.
And please know that that does not go underappreciated whatsoever. We're so thankful for you and for
Thank
your
you.
team. And to everybody who joined us tonight, if you have not read Redeeming Justice, please make sure to do so. Please also check out Mr. Adams's social media posts. The
Yeah.
content has just
I,
been really
I have one
interesting.
request too. I'm
Please,
sorry.
yeah.
So Carla just reminded me. So I get so many inquiries, phone calls for a paperback because my book can't make it into the prisons as they need to be as a hardcover. My publisher is setting some bars that I need to reach. I need to get reviews, and in those reviews, please place a request that this should be in paperback. Leave reviews on Amazon and on Goodread. Those are the ones that drive their attention. Because I would like to get this first book inside of the correction system. And the reason why is because I, for one, know they've gutted these correctional facilities with things that prepare people for when they are coming home. This book is not about wrongful conviction. It's about family, about life, and about redeeming justice. And I really need to get it inside of these correctional facilities.
Definitely. I'll make sure to include that note in a follow-up email that I'll send to everybody. Leave the reviews, request the paperback copies, my
Yes,
apologies. Um, yeah, as many people who can experience your story, the better. And thank you so much again for
yes,
sharing it. I hope you can see the chats coming in from
yeah.
people. Um, Thank you so, so much again. We're really grateful that you shared your time with us tonight.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Have a great evening. Thank you.